Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Workday. Workday is the next-gen ERP powered by AI that actually knows your business. It helps you handle the have-to-dos so you can focus on the can't-wait-to-dos. It's a new Workday.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How Are The podcast, and it's match day once again as we return to Premier League action at the Stadium of Light as we look to bounce back quickly from not only the fact that we lost our unbeaten home record to Liverpool, but also the fact that we suffered back-to-back defeats in the Premier League for the first time this season. The visitors to the Stadium of Light today are Fulham, who themselves are on a run of 3 straight defeats. And it's tight in the middle of that Premier League table at the moment, so only 2 points separates the two sides. So it's a good chance for either side to move up a couple of places, as well as, in our case, moving us to within a point of that magical 40-point mark. So I have 2 trusty steeds with me today to do all the heavy lifting and tell us how it's all going to play out. And first up, we have Johnny Hawley. Hello, Johnny.
Hello, Chris. It's good to be back talking about another game that we've got in the Premier League that it feels like we actually have a good chance of winning this time. So, yeah, excited for this one.
Yeah, well, actually, we talked after the game last week, but it's, I don't know whether it feels strange to have 2 early Sunday afternoon kickoffs in a row. It's a weird time to play, isn't it?
It is. I don't love it. And I'm not chuffed about the fact our next FA Cup game's early on a Sunday again. Not to derail this pod and get into all that, but yeah, it is odd. It just throws off the rhythms of your weekend, doesn't it? You know, if it's a Saturday 3 o'clock, if it's a home game, obviously go to the game if you're going or whatever. But it sets up the rest of the weekend nicely, I think. If we win, you're on a high. If we get beat, you can get it out the way, sharpish early doors and then focus on other things for the rest of the weekend. This is a bit of the worst of all worlds, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. You've got to decide whether to eat your Sunday dinner beforehand or if you're pissed off, you're not going to want it later on and all that. I mean, it's just the tactics of a Sunday game is unbelievable. But anyway, also with us today, we have Andrew Smithson. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, mate. These trusty steeds, is that a Steed Malbranc reference, or was that just a coincidence?
On a similar vein, sorry to cut in, but when you said the visitors this weekend, I immediately thought of Newcastle. It's totally infected as that.
Well, the visitors, that's another Sunday lunchtime kickoff, and it is playing hell with my mum's dinner arrangements all these Sunday lunchtimes. I am not in the good books at the moment.
There it is. You see, everyone spoils everyone's Sunday dinner. But actually, well, I can tell that you did the past meetings podcast by that reference to Steve Malbranc, Andrew. And I have to own up, I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. I just haven't had the time yet. But and I promise I will. But I did have a quick look. And I can't believe, I'm sure you referenced it, apologies if you didn't, but I can't believe that win under Chris Coleman that is available on Netflix forevermore was just over 8 years ago.
It's staggering. That actual pod, we don't talk too much about former players. We focus on 1 or 2 games, Martin and I. And yeah, that game would have made for a good conversation because wouldn't it have, had we lost, wouldn't we have gone a calendar year without a home win? I mean, just what a dismal time to be supporting Sunderland. And we nicked a 1-0 win, and was probably one of Coleman's Coleman's last decent performances. I think it's madness.
Yeah, I'm sure it was going to end up breaking a couple of records, wasn't it? Longest run without a win and something else. But anyway, Josh Madger got the goal. We ended up beating them. But former players as well. Did you touch on Andy Melville or not? Because I have to mention him.
Well, Andy Melville is like a pod favourite, Chris, mate. But no, he didn't. I don't think he got a little run out in that pod.
Well,
Gav does this to me as well. Gav will say things like, "Oh, and you've got the On This Week coming up. What did you talk about?" So maybe when you do catch up with it, Chris, when you do listen to that episode, I've probably gone into a 20-minute monologue about Andy Melville, and I've now forgotten it. So,
well, I'm sure the mentions of him have gone down since I stopped doing on this week's anyway. But look, anyway, let's get into it, because there was some big news in the press conference on Friday from the manager, and the big one, Johnny, was, of course, that Granit Xhaka had trained all week and is available to play. And obviously that's a huge boost. But are you surprised, actually, that it kind of happened so soon? Or do you think the club are kind of being on the more kind of less risk-averse side of things when it comes to Xhaka?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, by and large, they would have played it close to the chest, regardless of what was happening. If he was unfortunately going to be out longer, I think they'd have played that down. They wouldn't have come out and gone, "Oh, it's another 6 weeks, lads." It would have been, "Oh, there's been a minor setback and we'll see." And then obviously the reverse, thankfully, is actually true, and he's back and fit and training and that. So I'm not surprised they haven't made a big song and dance of it. And during the week, we haven't been bombarded with Xhaka pictures from training and stuff, because I think they were, like you say, possibly trying to be, I don't know if risk-averse is the way I'd describe it, but yes, in a sense, in that I don't think they wanted to overpromise, because they know how important Xhaka is and how emotionally invested we all are as fans in, seeing him come back. Because obviously he's, brilliant footballer, but everything else on top of it that he brings that we've all talked about, ad nauseum all season. I don't think they wanted to run I suppose it is being risk-averse, but they were trying to avoid the risk of getting the fan base all het up and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they've kind of done a little surprise return mini announcement. Even that's probably playing it up too much. But I'm pleasantly surprised that it is now, because you get to the Friday before a weekend game and you haven't heard if he's fit or not. You're not leaping to the conclusion that he's definitely fine and he's going to be playing. So to hear Labris come out and say that he's back and he'll be available for selection, which also is quite funny. Available for selection, as if there's any chance he doesn't get picked. But yeah, really, really good news. Chuffed to hear that. I've never been so emotionally invested in another man's ligaments, tendons and muscles before, but here we are.
Yeah, that's it. Well, look, Andrew, I mean, I don't know whether you could argue it might have been over-egged with some of the performances that we've put in while he's been missing, especially that one, well, let's say the first hour away to Arsenal. But the question was put to the manager to ask him how much has Sunderland missed Granit Xhaka during that period while he's been out. It was an interesting answer, because he was saying it's part of the journey when players like that are out. And, when you remove a leader, it almost leaves a vacuum there for somebody else to go and fill it. And it provides an opportunity, especially if, you're talking about especially the likes of Diarra and Siddiqui in that midfield, who are young players. It leaves an opportunity for them to become a leader themselves when that other voice isn't there. But do you think it was kindly understated, or do you think it's over-egged how much we missed him?
No, I don't think it was over-egged. Labris is right to have tried to turn it into a positive with his players and say to them, well, listen, this is your opportunity to take more of a leading role. He wouldn't have just been saying, right, lads, we're absolutely knackered. He's injured, so we'll just give up the ghost. So, he was right to say it as that. But there were moments in games where I felt we missed him. I don't think we would have lost as heavily to West Ham, for example, than Xhaka being on the pitch. I don't think we would have necessarily lost to Liverpool either, because Liverpool were excellent, don't get me wrong, but it was only a one goal margin at the end. So
from a set piece as well.
yeah. So we're bound to have missed him. I mean, any team would miss a player of his caliber and his leadership skills. We didn't fall to pieces completely, and there will be players who will be better for it, better for having to look after themselves a bit more and take a bit more of a team role. So yeah, I think it played a part, and it's quite interesting there, the discussion about did the club deliberately keep this quiet for the fans' point of view? A penny for Fulham's thoughts at the moment, because they'll be gutted at seeing this news. Had there been an inkling of it at the start of the week, might have impacted their plans, but to have this sprung on them relatively last minute, I think there'll be a few Fulham fans are a bit gutted by that development.
Yeah, be interesting. But Johnny, just because it kind of developed in that press conference, because there was another question that came about Xhaka, where he was saying he's travelling with the team, and they quoted Regis Lebris from early in the season saying it's like he's a coach on the pitch and all of this sort of stuff. They also ended up saying, "Is he like your assistant manager?" Where Regis Lebris had to turn around and says, "I've got an assistant manager and I've got a coaching staff." Thank you. I mean, do you think it almost gets to the point for Regis Lebris where he's got to slap it down a little bit, because they're almost saying, well, Xhaka's kind of running things, and you're kind of the manager, but Xhaka's doing everything else.
Yeah, it must be frustrating, mustn't it, if you are Lebris or one of those coaches in question, and everyone's going, "Oh well, Xhaka, he's a top class footballer, and he does your job on the side anyway. So what the hell do we need you for?" Yeah, I imagine that it is a lot more complicated than that behind the scenes, and there's quite a lot of value brought by these coaches. Otherwise, we wouldn't be paying them. So yeah, Xhaka's influence is as seismic as I think it is on the pitch, and he behaves, because the thing is, he behaves almost like a coach on the pitch at times, right? That's very, very different to behaving as a coach in training and off the pitch. So I think it's as much a byproduct of Xhaka's massive amount of football and intelligence and experience just naturally coming out of him on the pitch as it is anything else. It's not. I know that Xhaka's obviously lent into that role himself through the course of the season, and he definitely embraces it. And he's spoken about how that was essentially part of the reason he decided to join us in the first place. But I think it gets oversimplified a lot. As most things tend to do in the media generally, but certainly in the football media, it's very difficult to find nuanced analysis of anything unless you go looking for it. And even then,
thanks, Johnny, for that.
On every single other outlet other than How Are the Podcast, obviously, where we only bring you the cutting edge, serious business of football talk. But yeah, I think it's fallen into the territory of becoming a bit of a trope and a bit of a cliche that people just wheel out. Oh yeah, Xhaka coaches Sunderland on the pitch. Yeah, well, that's just what happens. And yeah, I think Lebris possibly deservedly given it slightly shorter shrift today than he usually does, or yesterday, or 2 days ago, or whenever the hell this pod's going out, compared to the press conference.
Just let the cut out the bag there. But just reminded us, you said about us doing serious football talk. I'm going to have to sort out another Room 101 at some point, but I'll get on sorting that. But Andrew, the other big news that came out of the press conference, which was really strange, because they started talking about Xhaka, and then suddenly Nick Barnes just went, "Oh, I assume everyone else is okay," and Regis Lebris was like, "Oh yeah," and then he went, "Oh no, actually, Reinildo's injured." And he almost kind of shocked the room. Everyone went, "What? Hang on, he's injured." He went, "Yeah, he's out for a few weeks." And it kind of caught everyone by surprise. But it was really weird, because do you think with that cup game, and everyone just assumed he was rested, nobody really asked?
That could very well have happened. And yeah, everybody probably all went in with the same question. We'll ask when Xhaka's going to come. Come back into the picture, and didn't think to write any other questions. It shocked me, and they've done well to keep that under wraps as well. I mean, training must have all been in the barn this week, because you're right, there's been no whispers coming out, there's been no photos. Both of these stories have come out of the blue, and from a serious point of view, it is a bit of a shame that Reinildo's going to be unavailable. And it makes Xhaka's return even more important because it gives us a bit of experience and getting a senior player back into the side will help cover for Reinildo's absence, I reckon.
Yeah. We'll get into the details of what we think the manager's going to do towards the end of the pod, Johnny. But he did say that Reinildo did pick up that injury against Liverpool, and it was a knee injury apparently. And they're looking at the moment, they said the Brighton game, which is of course, I think the week before we take on the visitors. But yeah, it is a blow, isn't it? I mean, Reinildo, he did recover from that performance against West Ham, where I think he had an off day there. But generally this season, he's been fantastic.
He's going to be a big miss, isn't he? There's no doubt about that. We've seen, like you say, all season that whenever he's played, obviously he missed a bit with the Cup of Nations and he had that suspension earlier on. But every time he's been on the pitch, he's looked like a top class player, a top class defender, and you've been able to see just oozing out of him all of the reasons why Diego Simeone, managed him and clearly liked him as a player. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lasted any length of time at Atletico Madrid. And we've seen that. I still maintain that signing him on a free is one of the biggest bargains of the whole season for anybody in the Premier League, and that includes some of our other ridiculous business. So yeah, he's going to be a huge miss. It's bad news, and it's quite bad timing in some ways. I suppose it's good timing in a sense because we've got an FA Cup game in this period that he's going to miss. So there's a weekend that he isn't missing a Premier League game. But I believe Brighton is our next home game after Fulham. So it's not good to be without him, and the fact that we're pretty much exclusively going to be without him for away games as well, excepting this weekend, and then if he's fit for Brighton, if he's not, whatever. It's not ideal. So it could have come at a better time. Obviously, the short term hope is that we cope in his absence, and I'm sure we'll get on later in the pod on how we think we'll go about doing that in this game. First and foremost, but then longer term, I hope he's fit for the marks because you don't want to be going into St James's Park down any of your starting 11, do you?
Yeah, it was funny. Everyone was looking at the fixture list and when the Brighton game was in relation to the Mags game as soon as he announced that. The other big one was I think he said Traore was going to be potentially back for the Bournemouth game, so we'll see how that plays out. One of the other talking points, Andrew, was, and I mentioned it in the introduction, was the fact that we could go on to 39 points. And there was a lot of discussion about that. And I asked, I was talking to Simon O'Rourke about this on the pod some point in the last week. I can't remember when it was. But we did mention about that because the whole conversation all season and even in pre-season has been about this, magical 40-point mark. And we're talking about it today. But is it one of those where, the way I put it to Simon O'Rourke was saying it's that cricketer on 99, isn't it? Where it's almost the closer you get to that 100, the further it seems away. Is there an element of that we get too hung up on getting to that 40 points instead of, we've got plenty of games. Is it just kind of, instead of focusing on winning the next game, it's still looking at that 40 points?
I think as supporters, it's understandable that we focus on it so much because 90-odd% of fans were saying this is going to be a relegation battle and we're going to be up against it. So this has been something that's been in the back of people's minds for a long time. And as typical Sunderland fans, the pessimist in you always comes out and says, oh, it's all going to go wrong. We're going to hit a rocky period and everything's going to blow up in our faces. So yeah, when we do finally get over that 40-point mark, I think a few fans will just have a deep breath and think, hey, this is the real deal. I think as players, though, their mental strength has been one of their real positives this year, and I don't think it's going to be impacting them too much. Lebris has spoken about this 40-point mark a few times. So yeah, they might internally just, have a little pat of everyone's back and say, well done, lads, we're all on track. But as soon as that happens, it'll be, right, what's next? Can we overtake somebody? Can we is Europe a possibility? So, yeah, I don't think it needs to be too much of a thing for the players, but as fans, yeah, let's just get over that. Let's just get rid of any remaining doubt, just to be sure.
Yeah, typical Sunderland. In the past, it would be the first team to go down on 45 points or something like that. But Johnny, there was on the same topic, there was a question put to him saying, if you get to when you get to 40 points, what's the new target? And he was like, "Oh, come on, just let us get to that first one first." But it is going to be, it's almost when you've got all your motivation to go to get to that one single target, which apparently is that 40-point mark. It is kind of probably psychologically difficult to say, right, well, let's go again, and what's the next one?
Yeah, massively. It's classic, isn't it? You hear it with teams who've won a couple of league titles on the bounce, or even one league title. You hear it with, in any walk of life, you set a goal, and then once you achieve the goal, the hardest thing in the world is how do you go again? That's one of the things that people have absolutely focused on with Pep Guardiola's Man City team. They've extolled the virtues of his coaching because he's been able to motivate a group of players to be able to win a league title, and then, okay, now the target's changed, it's the next one, then the next one, then the next one. Lebris has never really had to do that with Sunderland, has he? I suppose you could argue maybe that we presumably internally set the target of let's at least get in the playoffs last season, and then we achieved that in inverted commas reasonably early, and we had to reset a bit, and there was that strange period right at the end of the season. Not to dwell on it too much, but aside from that, he's only ever really had, sort of one focus that he's had to aim for in a given season, and he's not been here that long. So it's probably the first time that we'll really see him tested in that way, and it's going to be difficult. But I think internally, and the players have, in as many words, come out and said this a couple of times this season. A few different players have said, internally, we're not talking about survival, really. We're not going in every game going, it's going to be a big 3 points on the road to 40. It's, it's going to be, this winnable home game. Well, you have to win them if you want to stay up. Those won't have been the conversations happening in the dressing room, in the academy, on the training pitch. They'll have been talking about, let's win this game, because if we get 3 more points, then that's 3 points further to, that's the question, isn't it? What are they actually aiming for? I'm sure they'll have set internal targets that go far above and beyond survival, that involve potentially Europe, like Andrew said, potentially the FA Cup. There'll be also plenty of individual targets for the players as well. The strikers will be wanting to end the season with as many goals as they can. The midfielders will want to get assists. The defenders will want clean sheets, all that kind of thing. So there's plenty of motivating factors that the players have got, and Lebris will be able to draw on a lot of those between now and the end of the season. But yeah, trying to make sure that you've got that primary focus, that singular objective that everybody's pulling towards, that's the next step, isn't it? That's how we go from consolidation to progress. So, and I think it'll be a big question next season as well.
Yeah. Well, on that topic, before we get into Fulham and how the lads will line up, I think that's a good time to take a quick break. So we'll be back very soon.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
So you're running out of closet space. The good news? You don't need to stop shopping. You just need to start selling with The RealReal. The RealReal is the world's largest and most trusted resource for authenticated luxury resale. Whether it's that mini bag that can't even fit your phone, or those boots you never fully broke in, The RealReal handles everything from photography and copywriting to shipping and pricing. So you can just sit back, get paid, and make room for things that actually feel like you. And with 10,000 plus new arrivals every single day from top designers like Prada, Celine, Louis Vuitton, and Loewe, all for up to 90% off retail, you're bound to find something perfectly on brand to fill that extra closet space with. Plus, right now, you can get an extra $100 to shop when you sell for the first time. Make room for what feels like you. Go to therealreal.com to start selling and get your extra $100 to keep shopping at therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com. Terms apply.
And welcome back to How We're the podcast. And well, let's get into Fulham, of course, the opponents this afternoon. And we'll get back into the lads and how we'll approach it after that. Because it was interesting talking to Russ Goldberg on the opposition preview this week. Because if you look at Fulham this season, it just seems like it's been one whole big drama with Marco Silva. And the whole thing is really strange, Andrew. Looking at it, his contract runs out at the end of the season. And actually, that Russ Goldberg, who we had on, said he had a source that told him that actually Marco Silva was close to getting the Spurs job last summer. And obviously, with the way it's played out at Spurs, they've put an interim manager in place until the summer, potentially, and his contract runs out in the summer. So people are putting two and two together, but it's been a really strange one with Marco Silva because their whole season's just been about him and signing a new contract.
You're right. It's been rumbling a long time now, and it is so nice, isn't it, to be able to look at Fulham and Spurs and see all of this and just think, hey, let them get on with it. We seem to be a lot more stable at the moment and have a better idea of what's in our future. I hadn't really put two and two together with that one, but on the face of it, it would seem to make a lot of sense. And I can see why Fulham fans would be anxious, because Fulham, it's only over the last few years that they've finally become an established Premier League team. We've all known periods in their history where they weren't even top flight or second division. They were in the lower divisions. So from my point of view, Silva seems to be doing a really good job with them. They're probably outperforming expectations. So you would panic about what happens if he leaves and why hasn't he signed something longer term. And I think as well, there's always been question marks this season about their transfer policy, and it's not necessarily been they've been doing the right types of moves for the manager and for where the squad's at. So there'd be no guarantee that if Silva went, there'd be no guarantee that the club would be able to find a suitable replacement. So fully understand the anxiety, and it has always been part of the conversation around Fulham. So whilst they've done well to have picked up as many points as possible, it might, particularly in the final few weeks, it might come back and haunt them. As we're saying, how will Sunderland react if we get to this magic 40-point mark? I don't think you're going to see any Sunderland players lying on the floor of a casino with notes all around them, and that is used to happen. Whereas for Fulham, there will be questions and they could maybe take their eye off the ball. Be lovely to think that starts against us and we go, we take advantage of that.
Yeah. Well, just let Johnny recover from that, from thinking about that. Someone lying on the. I mean, who would do such a thing? But anyway, let's move on.
I haven't said anything wrong there.
No.
Yeah.
That's
all right.
Just
I wonder if they'll be able to narrow down who it was.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, just touching on what Andrew said, Johnny, Fulham are a really strange club because they were yo-yoing for like 5 years between the top two divisions, and for the 3 years, they've had a bit of momentum, finishing between 10th and 13th, I think, in the last 3 seasons in the Premier League. Reached the quarterfinal of the FA Cup twice, reached the semi-final of the League Cup in these last 3 years. So they're going great guns. But actually, the other thing I noticed the other day was they're probably the biggest club not to have won a major trophy yet as well, actually. And they're a really strange club. But at the point they're at the moment, they don't seem to know whether to stick or twist. And I think that's part of the whole Marco Silva scenario, isn't it? He doesn't feel they're ambitious enough, and they feel like they've kind of, they're at the limit, I suppose, of their ambitions. But it's that point, isn't it? You touched on it earlier, Johnny, where clubs get to a level where it's such a big leap and it takes such a lot of money to get to that next level. You're almost happy to keep spending the amount just that it takes for you to keep treading water in that mid-table area.
Yeah, and it's all to do with expectation levels as well, isn't it? Because we all know that, I mean, humans are fickle, but football fans are especially fickle. And what was once deemed to be unattainable, glory beyond your wildest dreams, suddenly becomes very, very routine when you have it for a few seasons. And, you only need to look at, I don't know, look at the way that the Brighton fans are starting to become a bit discontented with the way that they're seemingly treading water, and Fabian Hurtzler's maybe not developed as a manager the way they thought he would, and they've Brighton fans 15 years ago or so would have absolutely ripped your arms off to be where they've been the last few seasons, but soon as it becomes normal, you're finished. Because the expectation levels rise and rise and rise, and that's what does fear it in the end in football, isn't it? And I think with Marco Silva is a particularly interesting one, because I still think Fulham fans realise that they're quite lucky to have a manager like him. I think in terms of his ability, his ceiling's higher than where he is. The Tottenham link's interesting. I think he could do a really good job there. I mean, as good a job as any manager can do with how Tottenham are run. Just listen to Ange Postecoglou talk about it to get a bit more detail there. But yeah, I think that FA Cup, specifically the Cup quarter-final, which was against Man United a couple of seasons ago, I think they had a contentious red card, and I think that really, really hurt Silva, because I think he'll have looked at that. Like you say, Fulham did you say they've never won a major trophy? And especially seeing Palace break their duck in that regard last season at a fellow London club wouldn't have felt great. I think that's kind of a little bit like, I think you've talked about it before, Chris, the way that Martin O'Neill at Sunderland, that FA Cup quarter-final killed him. I think maybe a similar thing's happening with Silva at Fulham, just potentially dragged over a slightly longer period of time. And from the outside looking in, obviously I don't follow Fulham particularly closely, but I think this season always felt like it would end up being the final knockings of Marco Silva's Fulham reign, such as it's been. And yeah, it does give that strange sort of feeling where they're almost just gliding towards the end of the season now. There's not, they're still in the cup, aren't they? So they've got that to play for. But league-wise, like you've said as well, they're at that stage where they're not ready to go any higher. And it's difficult, I think, when you've got a club in that state to retain anybody ambitious, because it becomes quite obvious quite quickly, this is where we are for a while and we're not going any higher. We can only go down.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, we could probably do a whole pod on this topic, but as Johnny said, I mean, they're 12th in the table. They finished between 10th and 13th last few seasons, which is probably par for Fulham. But we could probably do a whole pod on this in terms of Sunderland. But is this a danger for Sunderland? Because again, on the opposition preview pod, Russ Goldberg saying they were getting beat at last weekend at half-time, I think, in that FA Cup tie. And all the Fulham fans on the socials saying, that's it, our season's over, this is a disaster because they're in mid-table. Now, us being in the position we're in now, if we got knocked out of the Cup, yes, it'd be a disappointment, but we'd say, we're looking forward to these games we've got coming up. We've still got the visitors to play. We've still, we're enjoying the Premier League. Is this a danger for Sunderland that if you get 2, 3, 4 years into finishing between, 9th and 14th or something, that people, there starts to be grumbles and you fans just naturally want more?
It could very possibly become an issue for us. We saw it during our last Premier League spell, when there started to be a kind of, people reached a feeling of apathy almost, because it was either we were circling the drain and pulling ourselves out of it at the last minute, which after a while actually gets quite tedious, or we were mid-table and not really breaking through. So that could well happen at Sunderland. I think you're right. This is a pod in its own right. I'm really interested listening to both of you two talking about this. And something struck me as you were speaking there. I don't know if this is may being big-headed, and I apologise if it is. But I wonder as well if the fact that Sunderland have come from nowhere and have had such a good Premier League season, and everybody's talking about a breath of fresh air, everybody's saying our recruitment's absolutely excellent. Are clubs like Fulham, Palace and Brighton looking at us and saying, "However," or whatever their version of "however" is in their local dialect. But however, we're told that there's a glass ceiling here. We're told the Championship clubs can't come and compete. Well, why have Sunderland been able to do that, and why have Sunderland potentially overtaken us? It might just add an extra frustration to all of these anxieties and where does the future lie. We could very well end up in that same boat ourselves down the line. I like to think that we won't, because the talk is of the club having long-term visions and plans, and this is only one part of the structured regrowth. But we could hit that point, and then the arguments will be between the likes of you and me and Johnny, who'll say, well, it's a damn sight better than when we're in League One. And then there'll be other fans saying, no, this isn't good enough. We need to do more. So it could happen to us. At the moment, though, we're enjoying the excitement of the Premier League. They've maybe become a bit tainted by it.
Yeah. Fulham fans don't say how they shop at Harrods and stuff like that, don't they? I
was going to say it'll be, come on, my fine gentlemen.
I'll leave it to you to do the poshest voice out of the three of us, Johnny. But looking more at Fulham, Johnny, especially their away form, actually, because they've lost 8 out of 13 away from home so far, and they've won just 3. And actually, those 3 wins were against West Ham, Burnley and Spurs. And I think only Wolves have got a worse record than those 3, sorry. I mean, in terms of the expectation now at Sunderland, we're talking about, getting close to that 40 points with lots of games left, being in mid-table, looking up the table. Are we now in a position to think, Fulham come to town, not great away from home, we should be taking 3 points?
Should is a potentially slightly entitled word to use, I think. I don't know if we're at the stage yet where we can be calling games like this, well, we should beat them. We definitely should target a win. It's the kind of game where you look at and you go, oh yeah, if we play well, if we, it's not the kind of game where you go, oh, we have to play at our absolute maximum, and even then we might still not get anything. It's not a Man City, it's not an Arsenal. So it's definitely the kind of game where we can be optimistic and we can, try and get a game plan together to win the game rather than to counter the opposition or to worry too much about what they're going to do. So, I think you're definitely right overall, but just to head off anyone who goes, oh, well, we can't be saying we should beat anyone, we're newly promoted. But to be honest, like even within that criticism there, I think there's a seed of truth to it, which is we don't really actually know what our barometer should be at this stage. This game on against Fulham, I wouldn't be surprised if we win, draw or lose. I think it's going to be quite close. Again, we'll get onto this in terms of the specifics of how we think the game will pan out, but I'm not expecting us to rock up and 3 or 4-0 them. And equally, I'm not expecting to get 3 or 4-0'd. So, are we the kind of team who wins these games? We don't know. Maybe. If we are, hopefully we see it. But, we've had such a bizarre season in a lot of ways that it's incredibly difficult to actually, take a reading of what our expectation level even should be, because as I said, we've took a point off City at home. We've took a point off Arsenal at home. The only team who's beat us at home is Liverpool. But then equally, we've dropped points away at Spurs, which this season somehow is a dreadful result, which is absolutely hilarious. We've dropped points away at Spurs. We've got beat off West Ham away. We've had results in either direction that surprise you, as every team does every season. Our problem is we don't have the body of work to draw from to be able to come to any real conclusions about what that means for us. So we're still in a bit of a discovery phase, which lends a lot of excitement to all the games. And that's where I think, to bring it back to your original question, I do think that's why we can look at a game like this and think, we probably should at least have a good chance of winning, because the body of work we have put together shows that we can. And because we don't have that ingrained, like Andrew kind of was touching on this before, when you're circling the drain for so long, you don't have any belief in your team. Even if you sign some good players, you look at it and you're like, they'll just end up eventually either leaving or they'll turn into the rest of them. Not to name any names or reference any famous casino incidents. But yeah, so we're unfettered by that sort of negativity and pessimism that can seep in, even at well-run and reasonably successful clubs. That apathy that can claw its way in. We don't currently have that, so I think we've got to take advantage of that and go into all these games with enthusiasm and think we can win and think we can beat people. And for a fact the players will. Not one of them in that dressing room on, whatever time it is, 1:00 in the afternoon when we're, getting ready to go out for the warm-ups and that. Not one of them is going to be scared of Fulham. So, we can take a lot of confidence from that, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, just building on that, Andrew, how much pressure do you think there is on Sunderland to win this one? Because we've talked about Fulham's away record and they've lost 4 out of the last 5. But then you look at Sunderland, of course, and we're recovering from having that psychological impact of losing our first home game, which is bound to be a blow, because that was probably a big thing that the players wanted to keep up. But we've lost 2 on the bounce for the first time as well, which is another thing we've got to mentally kind of get through. We've lost 4 out of the last 6. I mean, do you think the players are going to be more focused on the fact that actually during those games we've actually played pretty well, but the fact is it doesn't read well on paper when you read it out?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think Fulham's record's exactly the same. I think they've only won 2 out of the last 6 in the league. So we are 2 teams going into it with similar form. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about those 4 defeats, because if you actually look beyond the results, there was other factors. In a couple of games, we played better than the scoreline suggests. But it doesn't take long in football for momentum to swing the other way. It doesn't take long for nerves to creep in. So we do need to come up with a decent performance, a decent result to stop that. There will be, I don't know if pressure's the right word, but I think the players will have an expectation on themselves to do well. This is probably a game they would identify and see as a reasonable chance of picking up points. I don't think we need to be thinking too much about pressure just yet, because I know we've talked about the 40-point mark. I think we are fine. It's going to take a lot of things to go wrong for us to be in relegation bother. And yeah, even if we slip up against Fulham, you look at some of the fixtures coming up, particularly at home, I think we must only have maybe 5 or 6 home games in the league left. 3 or 4 of them are against teams who are in the lower half of the table.
Including Spurs.
Yeah. So if for some reason it doesn't happen against Fulham, I can see us picking up points elsewhere. This isn't a do or die match in my mind, at least.
I want to touch on or expand on something you just said there, Andrew. I think you've basically hit on the key reason why we can turn this pressure into a positive and other teams can't. It's because it's all internal pressure. Mm-hmm. It's the players put pressure on themselves because they want to win every game. The manager's putting pressure on his squad because he wants to challenge them. He wants to try and bring the best out of them. Arsenal are under pressure because everyone's calling them bottlers and they need to win games now because they've let their lead slip. Tottenham are under pressure because if they go down, it's a catastrophe. Nottingham Forest are under pressure because they're trying to avoid relegation. That's the kind of pressure that puts lead in your boots and locks your joints up and makes you freeze and you can't deliver. The kind of pressure I think we're playing under is the kind of pressure where, okay, yeah, some players maybe won't handle it as well as others, but it's the kind of pressure that I think spurs you on and drives you and motivates you to perform at your best. So it's a good point. I think you've absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because there's no real pressure coming from the fans at the moment. Because you listen to Fulham fans talk about being in virtually the same position, and they sound completely different. There's a completely different mindset. We are very happy where we are and what's going on. Fulham fans aren't, and I think that's the difference at the moment. So let's get into what Regis Labris is going to do in terms of this team, because obviously he made 6 changes for the cup game at Oxford, and we're expecting lots of players to come back in. There's also the decision about how he's going to go about replacing Reinildo at the back, and he did say he had a plan and just nodded and stopped there during his press conference. He wasn't going to give anything away, which is really strange, because actually I might have just thought, well, he's got a full back there. He just thought, well, Serkin comes in or something like that. He didn't say that, although that might be his plan. But I'll start with you, Andrew. Let's go at the back, because obviously Roofs is going to be in there. So how's he going to shuffle things at the back, do you think?
Well, the Reinildo news does alter my thinking, and there wasn't any mention of Alderete, was there?
Yeah, he said he was fine. He said he was fit.
Oh well,
it was a very quick one-liner.
Fair enough. That scuppers my plans, because I was thinking we might have seen 09 come in, because he can get us forward on the ball in the way Alderete does. Do we think? I mean, Xhaka there is coming back into the team. Do you reckon Humes thought, hang on, I might drop out here? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go and nobble one of the fullbacks so I can still get a game, because
he picked the wrong one.
Well, yeah. You would imagine he'll bring Hume in at left back, just because Hume is a more regular part of the team. I don't mind Serkin at all. I think he's done well in the games he's played. I'd be more than happy to see Serkin, but if I was Labris, you want to keep Hume in there for his other abilities, his set pieces, his leadership, like we said,
his long throws.
Well, yeah, because Mukiele stopped doing them for some reason.
Because he's joined Serkin with the wristband twins.
Yeah. The fella who supplies the club with like medical bandages and supplies and that must do well out of those two. So I think, maybe Hume does come in. Great to hear Alderete is available. You assume Alderete and Ballard go into the middle, and Mukiele at right back is just such a well-balanced, brilliant player who contributes at both ends of the pitch. I would be surprised if there was any thoughts of him being shuffled around.
Yeah, and the other thing that the opposition preview told us was the fact that Fulham have conceded lots of goals from set pieces, and they've conceded them late in the game, which is something we're pretty good at from time to time. So, but Johnny, do you agree with that? Just Hume slots in there instead of Serkin, and with Serkin's contract kind of status at the moment, what message would that send him?
Well, I'd play him. I'd play Serkin. It's tricky because I think there are really good arguments for starting either of them. I think Hume, you've both just touched on a lot of them already, but also just the fact that he's a right footer and he's very, very strong defensively. If Harry Wilson plays on that side for Fulham, he loves cutting inside. He's scored some absolutely brilliant goals this season. And his numbers in general, his output attacking-wise has been really good. So I could see potentially that being sort of the one aspect of Fulham's team that you might be willing to sacrifice something for yourself in order to try and stop. So I think Hume makes sense. And obviously, like you've said, the set pieces, his leadership, his tactical flexibility and ability to cover loads of different roles means he's brilliant to have on the pitch, even if he's not in his proper position. But I also think maybe he's just been a little bit overexposed recently. He's played out of position. He's taken a bit of flack from a lot of supporters. And look, his performances haven't been brilliant in every game, but some of that's a little unfair. But, it's not going to have done his confidence the world of good to be out of position and not playing at his absolute best. So I do wonder whether maybe yes, you lose something potentially defensively by bringing Sirkin in instead of Hume, but we'll miss Reinildo going forward on that left-hand side badly. His interplay with usually it's Siddiqui who sort of drifts to that side of the middle of midfield, and then whoever's playing on the left wing. That's been one of the few genuinely consistent, repeatable sort of aspects of our forward play. Sirkin, I think, can fill that hole pretty well. He's got a bit of pace about him. He likes going forward. We all know that. He's good at playing with the ball in those tight spaces. Better than I thought he would be at Premier League level, actually, going into the season. So, personally, I would fall down on that side of it. I'd be playing Dennis Sirkin. But as I say, I think you can make a pretty good case either way. So I'm not going to be disappointed with whoever is on the team sheet come whatever, well, it'll be 1:15, won't it? Because it's an hour and 15 minutes. But either way, we've got good options. So it's not like we're going, we've got to put Masuaku in, or we've got to chuck O'Nien in there. At that point, you're starting to worry. Whoever comes in, I think we can trust.
So less than a year ago, we were throwing Joe Anderson in there. So we're just going
exactly
put it like that, isn't it? But Andrew, moving into the midfield, because if you're saying you're moving Hume to left back, you've got the decision then, because on paper, Siddiqui, Diarra, Lafayette as a central three have been generally fantastic while Xhaka's been out. But then you've got Xhaka to come back in. So do you break up that three and Xhaka goes back in? Does Lafayette go out wide? How do you reshuffle that midfield?
It's really tricky, and like Johnny's put really well there. Sirkin makes sense at left back. Hume makes sense at left back to a point. None of this is, if you were to suggest any sort of lineup in midfield, I wouldn't be thinking nonsense. They're all really good options. I just think the money we spent on the three of them, and the fact that this was going to be our completely remodeled, brand spanking new midfield for the Premier League, I think we're going to try and get back to Xhaka, Siddiqui and Diarra. Lafay has been exceptional there, but he's an exceptional footballer, and whatever role you ask him to do, he'll do it brilliantly. So it's not as if moving him somewhere else means he then suddenly becomes a passenger and a waste of a shirt. I think I'd like to see those three is the middle three, which was what the club presumably originally intended, and get Lafay further up and say, go on, son, let's, Fulham aren't the best team. They've got an iffy away record. Get Lafay further up and see if we can attack.
Okay, so just quickly, Andrew, that means you're pushing him onto the left-hand side. You're bringing Xhaka back into that midfield. Angulo comes out then?
How come, Chris, whenever you ask me a question, I feel as if I'm in trouble and I've been caught out somehow?
I thought you were going with 12 players for a minute there.
I wouldn't put it past me. I've been jotting down notes here, and I've realised that the piece of paper that was meant to be my to-do list for work, I've just written all over it. So that's a bigger headache to me than the starting 11. I do think, Lafay would be potentially out wide at points. And that's a point, actually, if you do have Hume at left back, you need somebody else to provide more natural width. So that might be something I would reassess. But I don't think you shackle Lafay to any sort of position. Sometimes he's up alongside Broby. Sometimes he's on the edge of our box, slag tackling. I think as long as he's on the pitch, you can expect him to do what he needs to do.
Yeah, true politician. Still didn't answer whether Angulo comes out. But
yes,
Johnny,
Angulo comes out. There. I'll make it an election pledge.
Well, God! Well, that means he's definitely playing then, doesn't it?
That's number 5 on his to-do list after predict the Sunderland starting 11. But
get the GDP going up. Fix diplomatic relationships with Russia, and
fix the potholes first. Tell you,
fix the potholes, and then sort the starting 11.
Don't get me started, Johnny. In this midfield, if you've got Sirkin at left back, you've presumably got Hume at right back. Do you just push Lafay over to the left? Angulo misses out.
Do I have Hume at right back? I hate to say it, I'd be tempted to bench him, and not because I think that he sort of quote unquote deserves it. It would be with a heavy heart that I would relegate Hume to the bench for a game, but you basically touched on exactly what I was about to bring up, which is the balance issue. So because I agree with Andrew, I'd be looking to go back to that midfield three of Xhaka, Siddiqui, Diarra as soon as possible, because that's what the intention was. And I thought they were a good unit in the early weeks of the season. It was a shame that we didn't see more of them together. And that means that you've got to find a place for Lafay, the natural position for which is obviously out on the left. And he's been brilliant there at times this season. He was man of the match there against Brentford at home. So we know that he's going to perform. But then you've got Lafay, who's going to want to drift centrally. He's going to, massively favour the inside. He's not going to be trying to take people down the line. And then if you've got Trey Hume behind him, who also will naturally want to come inside, and he'll want to tuck into midfield, and he'll want to invert, and he's also not going to be beating people for pace down the outside, I worry that we would see something like what we saw under Tony Mowbray at times in the 23-24 season in the Championship, where Sirkin was missing for long stretches of that season, and we had absolutely no width in that team whatsoever. We had Hume tucking into midfield from right back. Everybody on either side was just wanting to come in. It was, Patrick Roberts on one side, Clark on the other. Again, not to relitigate 2 seasons ago, but that was a big problem. And maybe I'm a bit scarred from that to where I'm at the point where I think anything we can do to avoid that. And in this case, I think because Lafay probably has to go to the left wing, I think we need Sirkin to balance that out. And that's what I would do. So I totally agree with Andrew's midfield. Mm-hmm. I'd have the same three. I'd have Lafay on the left. The right wing is maybe the more interesting spot, to be honest, because nobody's really nailed it down other than Traore, who's obviously injured. And we haven't had partnerships form on that side beyond maybe you could say Mukiele and Hume, when they have played in the sort of Hume nominally as a right wing back and Mukiele as a right centre back. So I think there's a bit of a blank slate there, really, for anybody who wants to be able to come in and try and seize the initiative and take that position. And what better game to do it in than a home game against a team that we should at least be able to, to take the game to. Whether we'll score goals or not remains to be seen, but the opportunity's there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to assume we all agree that Brobbey's going to be up front, of course, with the form he's in. But Andrew, one last question on the starting 11. Just because I've just thought about it there at left back, potentially, because Regis Lebris was keeping his cards close to his chest in that press conference. Do you think potentially Gertrude is an option there?
Ooh. The long pause suggests not, because I'd not considered it.
That was a very interesting initial noise you made as well, Andrew, by the way. that was a first for me.
We'll cut that and we'll put it in every pod. But
the sort of noise a politician should be making, I'm sure.
But he seems a player to be. He can play in that midfield. He can play in central defence. People say he play at right back. Could he fill that position at left back?
I dare say he could. You'd perhaps be more inclined to do that in a game where you were expecting to be under the cosh and it was just a case of keeping the opposition out. I wonder if he lacks the ability to overlap and get forward. But he's such an interesting character, Chris, because he is this player who a few weeks ago could have very well gone to Liverpool. And in all of that talk there, I don't think any of us mentioned him as a potential starter. I like him, but where do you get him into the team?
With Xhaka back, he's almost gone down the pecking order, hasn't he?
Yeah, very, very true. So he might be wondering now, thinking, I wish I had pushed to make that move to Liverpool happen. I don't know. He's a interesting case, because I personally, on the face of it, think we should turn that into a permanent deal. But from his point of view, he probably isn't too keen on that idea. And I don't know if Lebris particularly feels he needs him, because he has been in and out lately. Good question, that, to be fair.
Yeah, just throwing it, just spotted him there because, like you said, we always kind of forget about him. But I'm sure Register Press is kind of looking for ways to get him into the side because he's a good player. But Johnny, just in terms of the game, because I'm just going back to the Burnley game, the last kind of, I suppose the last home game where we didn't play someone like Liverpool, and I think we started to really control the game against Burnley. And I'm not suggesting Fulham are completely in the same block as Burnley, but they're in the kind of bottom half of the Premier League. I mean, are we thinking Sunderland might control the ball, especially with Xhaka back, and really kind of pin Fulham in for long period?
This is the one thing that I don't think we've had much control over this season. I think Labris has been big on, obviously, controlling the controllables, to sound like a LinkedIn lunatic, is, sort of all the rage, isn't it, in football at the minute? It's, that's why I think the Premier League's gone the way it's gone in the style of football, because you've got total control over your set piece routines, so let's maximise those. You can have things set out ahead of time and organised and all the rest of it. How much the other team wants you to have the ball is not under your control. And I think at times when our worst performances have been sometimes when teams have identified that, like, actually, do this Sunderland team want the ball? Do they want control of possession? I don't think they do. And so that's been able to be weaponised against us a little bit. So I think it's going to depend on Fulham. If I was Marco Silva, I mean, a lot of things would be very different, but if I was Marco Silva, I'd be looking at this game and thinking, I think we want to sit a little bit deeper against this Sunderland team, restrict any space that's on offer, and invite them onto us a bit and, give the classic, can you break us down? Let's see what you've got. And then maybe try and play it from there. So, yeah, it's a difficult one because obviously having more of the ball, if you've got the ball, the opponent doesn't, and you can't score if you haven't got the ball, by and large, unless you're Nick Voltemada. But it presents an interesting dilemma because it's not often. This is why I was kind of trying to make the point before about we don't know what our level is. We've not had many games where we're expected to be the team that tries to control things and maybe, dictate the proceedings. We've done it well at times, Burnley game being a brilliant example of that. But as you say, unfortunately, I think Fulham are going to be a little bit better than that. Maybe the Crystal Palace game's another example, or the Bournemouth home game could be another comparable one. That Bournemouth game, that at times they did sit in against us and we had to maybe break them down a little bit in patches of that second half. So I think we've shown that we can do it. It's whether we can consistently, over the course of a 90-minute display, can we be the team that makes all the running? Can we be the ones who dominate intentionally from start to finish? Not sure that we've necessarily got that, but maybe.
It's a valid concern to have. Your LinkedIn chat at the start of that answer was very impressive, and I'm going to offer you a place in my cabinet when I get voted in, Johnny. So
brilliant. First order of business is make sure that he doesn't doodle all over his to-do list.
Yeah, that's going to be a worry when I've scrolled out the codes for the big nuclear bomb and put, does Hume play left back or right back?
That'd probably be more sense than what's in a lot of world leaders' notes, mate. So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking Donald Trump's done that thing in The Big Lebowski, where he's doodled on it, like in that scene.
Don't, Chris. He's already taken the BBC to court. We can't afford him doing us for
change the subject quickly.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just being silly there. We're trying to have a serious point. I'm a little bit worried that Sunday might be a bit flat. We've joked, haven't we, about the Sunday dinners and, there's going to be mums up and down the northeast complaining because food's not getting eaten and all of this type of thing. But I don't know, just 2:00 on a Sunday just seems a bit meh. I mean, why is it even on a Sunday? Is it on the TV?
Yeah, well, it's on Sky just purely because it's not Saturday 3:00.
Yeah, I don't know if it's particularly an interesting game for the neutral. You know, normally Sunday games are teams who've been in Europe or something.
Well,
so
I was just going to say there's been loads of it this season, hasn't there? Because 9 teams in the league are in Europe, and then obviously you've got the cup competitions on top of that. Fixtures being rearranged. It's been a nightmare.
It's part of the new deal to have show more. So they've moved. So there's 3 games that kick off at 2:00, and all of them are shown on Sky. And then of course there's the North London derby on at 4:30. So there's 3 games kick off at 2.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Though it just all seems a bit like, nah. There's nothing particularly grabbing about this game, and I think as a match it'll potentially be quite. I can't see there being any like huge stories or moments from us. I think Sunderland will win. I think our home form. We can kind of put the Liverpool performance to one side and admit that Liverpool were having one of their better days and were looking more like the team they were last season. I think our home form's good enough and I expect us to win, but I'm not expecting thrills and spills. I can't see there being any like, oh, you'll never guess what's happened at the stadium. I think it'll just be a bit matter of fact and just getting the job done type of afternoon for us.
Yeah. Well, because we've done our usual, and this was supposed to be a quick half hour, and we've gone on far too long as usual, we'll get into predictions very quickly. So we'll start with you, Johnny.
Yeah, like I said before, I think it's going to be close. I do back us, though. I'm quietly confident going into this one, now that we've got Xhaka back, now that we've, hopefully buoyed by a little bit of positive momentum through in the cup. Xhaka's back. We've got, obviously, Reinildo out's not ideal, a slight dampener on it, but things are starting to look up, I think, and hopefully this should signal the start of a really, really positive run-in for us. Because, again, we've all touched on it, we're not one of these teams who, as soon as we go out the FA Cup, that's it, season's over. There's still plenty to be extracted from this season for us, and getting a good result today, got it right this time, getting a good result today could potentially be a big part in kickstarting that momentum. So I'm going to go with 2-1 to Sunderland, and I reckon Brobby's going to get a goal, and it's been a long time coming for Siddiqui, so maybe Noah Siddiqui's going to notch one, and I don't care who scores for Fulham.
Good stuff. Andrew?
You'll care at the time when it goes in, Johnny. You'll be fuming when it happens, but
the people around us will definitely hear about it. Like
when it's a Xhaka own goal from 30 yards, like Bawley did that.
Well, I was going to say I actually think Xhaka coming back will see us becoming a threat at corners again. He's good at taking corners, so I wouldn't be surprised if something came off one of them. I'll go 2-0. I'll say Roofs will have a quiet afternoon and keep a fairly comfortable clean sheet. As for scorers, take your pick. As long as they're wearing red and white, that'll do for me.
Yeah. Well, that's a clean sweep because I've gone 1-0 on the preview with a goal in the last, I'm going to say 10-15 minutes, and I'm going to stick Dan Ballard from a corner or a free kick, and he's going to get the winner later on. So we've got a clean sweep of Sunderland wins. So I would check the odds on Fulham for as quickly as you can for this afternoon's game. But that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Andrew. Really appreciate it, mate.
Thank you. Loved that. Good fun.
Yep. And Johnny, always a pleasure, mate.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much.
Good stuff. And and enjoy your day, gents, hopefully with the right results. But thanks again, everyone, for listening. Don't forget, if we're not enough for your pre-match build-up, we've got loads more build-up on the Roker Report website. And don't forget, we'll have a pod with immediate reaction, hopefully, with a bit of luck. It's going to be Gav in the pub after the final whistle, depending on how many he had before kickoff. But yeah, so listen out for that later on this afternoon. But from us, it's bye for now.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Tap the banner to learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.